Hi. Now, welcome back to my studio practice. I'm not entirely sure what is streaming right now because it doesn't match up with what's on my YouTube. But my OBS is looking good, so welcome back to my studio practice. And I've done a little bit of research in the meantime. I have gotten to my hummingbird book, which is a life-size guide to every species. And I tried really hard, to try and find the hummingbird that my wife took a picture of. And so I went to this book, and look, after a bit of research in here, we discovered the purple-throated mountain gem. This species is a striking bird, both sexes being colourful and very distinct. The male is glossy green with a light turquoise forehead and deep violet throat patch. So light turquoise, deep purple. That makes sense. And has a dark tail and wings. Not relevant to us because that's not part of the photo or reference. The female is shining green above and rich cinnamon below. Both sexes have a fine white stripe behind the eye, which from this angle isn't actually visible. So, not relevant. Males usually feed near the canopy while females feed at lower levels. Both sexes hunt insects, males more often by hawking and females by gleaning. The female nests rather low in the understory, usually next to a clearing of some kind, and camouflages the nest cup with outer layers of moss and lichen. This species has a small range that has suffered some deforestation, but although it is probably declining, it is currently not considered to be of conservation concern. And so its conservation status is of least concern. And if we look at the map, it's right in the dead center of where we visited in Costa Rica. So it's absolutely the perfect candidate. This is a purple-throated mountain gem that's being painted. Right, so actually the next painting was going to be this one here, which is the female, but we actually thought it was the male of a different species. And so this male and this female we encountered when we went to Monteverde Hummingbird Garden in Costa Rica, and we fed these from our hand. They actually perched on us. They were so familiar. Now, I looked through the entire book, which is very thorough, and it took me a long time to discover this bird, which is actually on the cover of the book. I can't believe that I spent so much time trying to find the thing which is right in front of me. So, there it is, a purple-throated mountain gem. Now, the next thing I've been considering is you cannot make the colour Diox purple. I've made a lovely purple that's quite close to the reference photo, but if you don't have the pigment, it's very hard to match that actual pigment. So today, what I'm going to do is, in creating this little work which has an even smaller easel and decorative easel and canvas, to make a nice little project there. I'm going to actually experiment with purples and violets, and maybe even different pinks as highlights, and also maybe use this book here, which has got lovely greens, just delicious greens here, that might inform the darks on my painting. Okay, so I can think of a number of reasons why I would want to use this purple. So basically I'm just going to play with the purple and see what happens. So you can see palette cam over here. I'm going to put some of this Diox Dioxazine purple. I find it so hard to say, I just call it Diox purple. I can't even say Diox at the moment. And there it is next to the mix that I've made before. And beside it, I want some magenta, because I feel that some nice clean magenta is going to help us out tremendously. And a lot more of my lovely titanium white. Okay, so and there's some indigo as well, so I'll get titanium white in a minute. So I'll get indigo, some more fresh indigo over here. You'll see that my mixing palette is just greaseproof paper. Which makes the whole operation of cleaning up a lot easier. Although I've recently purchased gouache paints, and they recommend, some people recommend a glass mixing palette, and cleaning up is so much easier because the gouache just dissolves and washes off, whereas I was struggling with the oil paint. Okay, so how can I use this? Well, I'm going to move this photo reference over here, and I'm going to vanish because you don't need to see me. Bye-bye. Okay. Now, here's my reference photo, and I need it quite big, and the painting that I'm working on. Now, if you look at the gorgette in particular, you can see the tiling that is quite evident. I'm trying to find the right brush to mix my colours with. The scallop detail, which you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some, and what I forgot to do is just add, every day, just add a little bit more stand oil into the mix. So to maintain the fat over lean rule, so just a little bit more. I'm not being mathematical about it, I could actually measure it out. And I also don't worry about the mix getting dirty at all. It's nothing to worry about. I studied a Scottish artist called John Bellany. I studied him intensively for about 2 years, and came to the conclusion that cleaning your brush wasn't actually all that necessary. So I've got this Diox purple here, and first of all I'm going to try it on this area to see if I can make my darks even darker, and also to clean up the edges a little bit, because with all that stippling that we did before, there's the bird's right eye, with all the stippling that we did before, we kind of lost some detailing here. So we need something that provides our very darkest dark. And Diox purple is very, very dark without being black. But also we must remember that the hummingbird's characteristic is this lovely kind of dark purple colour. Let's put in that notch there for the gorgette. There's a little nick that's been taken out of it. And this here is where the gorgette should really end. I'm correcting my drawing as we go along. Which is the joy of oil paint, is that you can just endlessly sort of rework your painting. Now this brush here is a Rosemary and Co Kolinsky Sable Series 33. which I use for watercolor. But because my mix here is so dilute, and because the tip of this is so tiny, I need this for the tiny details that I'm about to perform. Let me straighten up the beak a little bit. It's going a little bit lopsided. Okay, now back into my darks. Now the thing about my darks here is these, even although it's dark, the characteristic kind of scallop design of the feathers of the bird. There's a notch there and then it comes back down. There's a little loose feather here, little loose feather cluster comes here, comes back down. The feathering pattern still exists, so this kind of scalloped effect is still evident, even within the darks of the bird, which now makes this light patch a little bit too light. I'm going to knock that back with a little bit of purple. And also, as well as that, there is that sense that while we are painting a bird, we're not copying a bird, we're not trying to replace the photograph of a bird. We are trying to respond to the bird in an artistic way. Now, I've just noticed a little dark notch on the breast there. So that needs to come out. And in here, I suspect, within the detailing here, that's where the wing resides. So in amongst all the kind of scalloping that I'm kind of indicating loosely, that's where the the wing resides. So there's a notch there, and that notch kind of identifies where the gorgette starts and stops. Okay. Now within my mix, I have the eye here, darkening here. And also what I can see is a very, very thin line here, which I need to tidy up that edge. Now, just tidy up that little corner. Is that the right word? Bring the bird back in a little bit because it's not as bulky as that. So, that's okay. Now this purple is going to be useful because if we look very closely at the reference photo and I move my copy, my painting if you like, to the side and put my glasses on, we can see that there is this kind of loop-the-loop pattern. And before I start getting into all the beautiful light lilacs that are possible, I want to try and indicate that these are here. So scallop. So there's going to be a lot of scalloping work. And I already noticed that my brush work is far too heavy. And I sense that it may be necessary for me to edit what I'm doing. But you get the idea that these tiny little marks exist on the bird to give us this kind of scalloping detail. Let's try a rigger, see if we get on a little bit better with those. A little bit more medium in the mix, a little bit more paint to make it richer. See if we can rotate. You notice how I'm spinning the brush around. One or two trial marks. before we begin and see if we can make more precise marks than before. So the dark that we're applying will provide the foil that will show up the lighter colours that we're about to apply. So I'm now painting what I know rather than what I see. I am cheating in a sense. And round about this notch here is a little V-shaped notch. The gorgette kind of divides. And we need to lift out a little bit there. That's a little bit too juicy. More paint on this medium. Same again here, slightly different there. Okay, so now what we've done is we've kind of scalloped in the areas which show where the different feather patterns exist on this bird. Okay, now I've recently gotten to appreciate the dark that is indigo. Now indigo for me is a very, very nice dark colour. So let's go down here where I find its very darkest values are here, down in this corner of the bird. And again, I feel I need to revisit some of my dark areas again and reassess their dark values. A little bit more medium. Back into my paint a little bit more. See, I'm rotating the brush. A little bit more medium. Now you'll probably find that with these water-mixable oils, because I'm using Winsor and Newton artisan water-mixable oils, and some of my range that I'm using are very, very old indeed. So I would recommend that you buy fresh paint. But I'm using up old stock, and what I'm trying to do here is make the dark, which is very, very dark. I'm trying to give it some life, so it's not flat, but is actually made up of details that are barely perceptible. So what I'm doing is within this dark, I'm trying to build up the kind of textures that I know exist in this bird, which can be seen slightly more on the book that I have. But I suspect that indigo is helping me reach the darkest of my dark values in a very satisfactory way. So in my own art practice, I will have to explore a little bit more. Let's see if my old trick will work. Take some paint off here, apply it onto the ferrule. So off the hairs of the brush onto the ferrule to make a little pellet. So I can apply that very, very carefully onto the tip of the brush. And I need to straighten up this beak somewhat, make it more symmetrical and darker. stopping the rating for the moment because this is quite tricky. So it's a fairly robust beak for such a small hummingbird. Let's get the dark on the eye. It's in shadow there, we can't really see it. Let's bring the darks in from the side. And a little bit up here. Okay, we are good. So now we can use this dark to bring in into the dark area the scalloping effect of feathers overlapping, but also that mark making is breaking up those colours and also contributing to the notion of darkening those colours. So I'm noticing a little diamond shape here that needs to be darkened, and if I do almost like pointillism actually, you build up colours by the association of small pellets of colour close to each other, and that is something that Seurat, Seurat, was particularly effective at. Let's take a little bit more of a pellet of colour off the ferrule and back into that little detail there. We need that there to lift that out. Okay, I also noticed that there's a dark kind of baggy eye. There's a little triangle under the bird's left eye, which we perceive on the right hand side. Okay, so that dark mix is becoming equivalent, and now if I move that out to the side a little bit, we can bulk out the bird a little bit. There's a hint of a wing there, and I'm okay. So we're now finished with those two brushes for just now. I'll take the final of my riggers into the medium, into the white, and make up a nice pool of colour, which we shall introduce to the blue. If you remember yesterday, it was blue and viridian mix. So actually, let's see if we can bring a little bit more viridian. Touch more. And cerulean blue hue. Back to where it was on the palette. Now, of all my old paints, they're all the same age, apart from the white. It's new, you can see. It's a different kind of design from the old ones. Old design and design. Of all my old paints, the cerulean blue hue seems to be the tackiest. It seems to resist working. Let's bring in a little bit of cerulean blue, viridian into the cerulean blue to green it up a little. And let's try that and see how we go on. Oh, far too light, I think. Very, very light. But then there are light highlights within the forehead. So we go from dark near where the brow ridge is to dark where the outside of the crest is. And we meet this very pale colour in the middle. But I feel that we should maybe darken that later. So instead of working from dark to light, we might have to add some lights. Instead of working dark to light, we may have to work some lights into the dark that's there. But I noticed that the crown itself is sort of highlighted with a grey that may be made, I think, from maybe a brown or an indigo. So what I'm doing is I'm lifting out a little bit of the excess indigo, and I'm using that to make crest ends, while also lightening the centre of the beak. And actually, I may have accidentally stumbled upon the thing that I need. Okay, and also down here, there is some shade cast. So again, lifting out material to apply it elsewhere. Lifting out some more. Actually works. So I may even extend it further than I need, just so I can revisit some of these areas with greater intensity of white in my blue mix. So back into the mix. Short strokes for short hairs. Short strokes. Building up short strokes. And of course, I can't get the look that I am indeed looking for using the dark to correct the beak. Here we go. Almost like black Tipex. So I'm hunting for my embossing tool and making sure the end is clean. I'll scrape back into that and try and build in tiny little textures, which I might correct. Tiny little textures that I might correct later. And later being now. So, let's see. Looks okay. There's a light tip on the end of the beak. I may actually drag that down and give some visual interest to the beak there. That light tip might need lightening even more. And what happens with the mud that I created before? It's all dried out. Okay. I've introduced a little bit of titanium white into the mix. And so I can see that there are little skips of light. Not enough, so more white into the titanium white into the mix. And I'm going to paint inside the little scallops that I have made. Like so. Now, the other day, I hinted that I saw some puffed out cheeks on the bird. And so what I'm going to try and do is show the puffed out cheeks by building into the scallops that I've made with this highlighted colour. And so there is the puffed cheek beginning to emerge, I hope. One puffed cheek on one side, back into my light colour. And some puffing of the cheeks on this side. Although in terms of colour, this side should actually be more blue. Maybe that's something I can correct at a later date. But another word that might describe the effect is cobbled. It actually looks as if the surface of the neck is cobbled. So let's get close to that notch on its cheek. And you see that I'm trying to bring some cerulean blue hue and titanium white mix into my Diox purple to see if I can get a light colour that has a blue bias. It also creates a little bit of highlight here on the bird. And some harmony within the overall painting, is that there's a family resemblance in the colours, that you're using colours that you've previously used. And actually these feathers could easily be made up by single touches. Okay, let's bring a little bit more white into the mix and progressively lighten it and also blue it. So again, a lighter mix. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and bring out one end of the puffy cheeks, but I can see that there's a little detail there. Perhaps more white is needed. And then smaller marks within the tiles, so almost a tile or a little cobble or pebble within the tile that's been identified. The more I could get away with even lighter. And yet bluer. Let's try this side here. I can see a little tiny little detail. A little bit more blue. In the colours that I see. And again here, little amounts of lighter colour. Let's see if I can borrow a ferrule. Wipe off the excess. Oop. Wipe off the excess because I've mixed the colour with the brush, so the hairs are saturated with the colour that I want to use. I can streamline the tip of the brush, and I can also pick off little pellets of colour to apply more precisely in that scalloped shape. So this is the little puffy cheek that I was mentioning before. It's a little colour detail that makes that side of the cheek kind of stand out from the rest. And let's see if we can apply something similar here. Push comes to shove, I can always glaze over this side here and make sure that the patterns I see, that side is bluer. I can always reintroduce that with glazes. Okay, and again a lighter mix, because round about the base here I can see some very, very light marks coming in. But if I appear to lose any of the detailing, I can always go back to my embossing tool and try and draw around each tile and neaten each one up a little bit more. Especially on this side. So if the mark making has gotten a little bit confused, I can re-scallop some of the areas, so that's okay. And also it's occurred to me that I can also do that with the dark that I've put in. I can try and bring out one or two little details so that the dark is not completely devoid of information. Like so. And even within this dark area here, this little dark patch that I see, I can sgraffito in some little highlights to suggest that there's movements within the hairs of the feathers. I spoke about hair design the other day, or feather design. And so there's a little bit more visual interest. Down at the bottom here, there is pronounced lightning. So a lot of scraping back. There's a couple of tufts, which I mentioned before, were kind of buff tufts. I'm now inclined again to go in with my indigo and darken some areas. That have been scraped out. So you can see it's a bit of to and fro, adding, taking away, until you reach the ideal balance. Again, you don't want too many strokes. I read somewhere that Alla Prima was 3 strokes, and then you're no longer applying paint, you're removing it. Round about the beak area here, the feathers are very, very small indeed. Some definition has been lost on this corner, and this is an area where a bit of shade is creeping in from the side. So back into my colour mix. Try and introduce a few, let the dark creep in a little bit more so that the light is only catching tips, little light parts of the ends of these scalloped feathers. Okay, now what happens when we add indigo, which is a kind of blue, to a lot of yellow? Do we get a green? What kind of green do we get? That's quite a nice green there, and a darker version of it there. Okay, so because I can see little patches of greenery, or little hints and glints, which if I put them here, kind of stand out a little bit more. And I can actually see little patches of colour within the dark that I've been mentioning. And if I go for a little bit more, right, pull it into there, into the umber to make it more mustard, more kind of mustard colour, and yet into the light to make it a lighter version of that mustard colour. Am I getting there? What happens? No, too brown. Bit more light. In fact, I could get away from lifting it from this pile here. There is the light patch. Not light enough. Not light enough there either. More white into it. Touch of yellow to balance it off. There's a light patch there. Yep, got it. Okay, and even lighter there, so I could go in with even more white. And see if we can lighten it even more than that. Okay, we got you. There's some more white into the blue. What happens? Can we make a crest? Possibly too successfully. So I know a technique for knocking that back. The sgraffito technique. And also for the tip of the beak, it needs to be reshaped on this side, reshaped on that side. Back into my dark. Can I re-establish it correctly? Okay, there's my dark. And there's the dark that I needed. And here. And here. But the light needs to be very precisely applied. So just a very, very light neck color there. And its companion there. So now I've overdone it. Back into my indigo. And if I darken the center, will the sides become lighter? A little. And so it works. Let's take the blue here and see. I can add it in to make an eye ball, which can be shaped with indigo to its correct sheen. and value. And now I think that those greens there need just a few little highlights. Yellow, just to pick it out. Where did I put it? There, some of that yellow into this greenery here, just to lift it out a little bit more. Just a tad. Okay, we are good. Just a suggestion of green there. Now, that same yellow, that same green, used with medium to flow. I've overdone it. We pull in some more paint there, a little bit more dark, a little bit more from the indigo. Okay, now a single confident stroke to make the stem that I see. Reiterated. Darkened to the underside with a little bit more indigo in the mix. Lightened on top with the yellow. Okay, so this is now probably within the second hour of this painting still. And all the main features are there. Can I get away with some yellow? Some more pure yellow over my yellow corner. And use it to lighten up what's already there. So with a bit of luck, we can strengthen these values. And again here, around the top of the crest, the yellow can be seen a little bit more. So I may be exaggerating the colours a little bit, but I know that yellow and purple are going to work very, very well together. And so I'm very keen to introduce them to each other. And that yellow lemon is going to be good for the sensation of light. And so that runs out there. And I bring in just pure white. I can make a light patch here. Some chalkiness there, and some more chalkiness here. Strengthen that right up a tad. Oh, that's way too much. Way too much there. It's sitting upright on the brush, so let's see if we can bring that more in there. Just gently tease it out into the surrounding area, trying to create this lighter value, which is more towards a kind of dull lemon. Similarly here, a little patch which goes against the body here. Now if we do that, that may help. Neaten up the edge of the bird. So, slightly more lemon light going on there. So, try not to overwork it too much. While at the same time using it to redefine the shape of the bird. For instance, I feel the cheek goes in a little bit there. And whiteness here extends upwards and more smoothly up the side of the bird here. So now it's allowing my more creative instincts to move in, not be so concerned with the verisimilitude of a copy, but creating the feel of this painting that I'm after. Okay, now all of that is abrupt, so I'm going to go back into my smooshing brush, make sure it's dry on the towel, and do some soft focus work. Try and remove some of the brush marks. But the more medium that you use with the stand oil and such like, you will get, you will see that the paint becomes more viscous and actually more self-leveling. There's a little highlight there that I hadn't noticed before, which is of interest. Breaks up the monotony of that dark patch down the side, which I'm losing a little bit of interest in. It's not so valuable to me before. I want a lighter image. And this yellow and green, can I get a sap green? Nope. So more yellow into the green that I've made, which is indigo into indigo mixed into cadmium yellow light, is giving me deliciously sap green, which I'm now going to use to draw the top of this stem, make a break, and then continue and continue out. And do that all but confidently. Some middle greens there, which maybe can bring some warmth. into the image. Okay. Here. And I think I'm right in saying that there is a white down here. Okay. We have gotten very, very close and haven't used any of the magenta at all. So I'm wiping off the brush, using the medium, sort of as a thinner, just to get the loosen up the paint, get it off. What can I do with this magenta here? This magenta in that Diox purple with this. Ooh, that's nice. But I don't see it anywhere on my image. So let's try knocking it back with indigo. Well, we've got a delicious colour. But is it the purple I'm looking for? It's more like grey. Let's see how it reacts. With just one or two touches, it's a much cooler colour. Not unwelcome. Adds a little bit more variety, but I'm actually beginning to suspect that we don't really need it. I used a little too dark on the underside of that stem. And I feel that is it for today. Maybe even for the painting. So let me come back to you and say thank you for viewing. Thank you for viewing. This hummingbird is now a lot closer than it was before. I'm not matching at all. I'm not matching at all the yellow, the greenish yellow that surrounds the head. I'm getting a much more mustardy colour. So I think even with mixing white into my titanium white into my cadmium yellow light, I'm still not approaching the kind of lemon greens that I need. So I would probably need a lemon yellow for that because I can't match it. But as a substitute to it, I feel that this painting is doing okay. The turquoise is believable. If anything, I feel that it could be even more. Let's try a little bit here. Yep, we can get away with some even more highlights on it. Just smoothing out the work that's gone before it. Maybe prepare some final highlights for it. But in terms of the olive body and the darkness of the body and some highlights coming through, I think that's worked. I think I'm getting a little bit better at this. Thank you for watching this episode, which I'm now bringing to a close. If you're interested in the hummingbirds, this is a great book. I hope you found something of interest to you, something that inspires you to be creative wherever you are. Thank you again for watching this episode, and hopefully I can see you in the next episode. So, bye bye for now.